All right, NFL trade deadline approaching, a couple weeks away now. We're going to see a little bit more movement, I believe, between now and then as the arms race continues in both conferences. So my deep dive today, I wanted to discuss our favorite hypothetical trades. I'll just give a couple off the top that are my favorite. I think Deontay Johnson to the Chargers. We saw it this past weekend. Monday Night Football against the Arizona Cardinals. Justin Herbert is throwing to
tight ends.
Yes.
And still throwing it for 350
I was like, he's still throwing for 350 yards almost.
But he just doesn't have that explosive playmaker yet.
And when he does, he fumbles it out of the end zone.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I think Deontay Johnson, he's in a last year of his deal in Carolina. And obviously you think they traded for him. They gave up a good amount. They want to keep him there. But as we've seen in Carolina, they also need draft picks. They also need more than just one wide receiver, and paying him a ton of money may not change their fortune. So if you can get a day 2 pick for a guy like Deontay Johnson, I think they'd pull the trigger. Now the Chargers, would they do it? Who knows? But I think the need there is very evident with what I've seen from them on tape.
I think that could work from both sides. I mean, to your point, you give a guy like Justin Herbert another weapon, and maybe he hits that 400 mark, and maybe you end up beating the Cardinals in prime time. If I got a guy like Justin Herbert, I want to maximize his potential, put pass catchers on the field that can do a multitude of things. Deontay Johnson can run a number of different types of routes. He's got the right body type and explosion to be able to help that offense.
I would just question how they would get it under the cap. Now, Carolina would probably have to pay most of his salary for this year. And would they be cool with that? If they're cool with that, they would probably want a higher draft pick. That's the only issue.
I wonder where that draft pick would be. It would probably be bottom of the second round, mid bottom of the second round.
But would you feel comfortable with the Chargers doing that? Especially for a guy that's
I'd have to see the numbers. I'd have to see the numbers. I was listening to somebody talk about what the Vikings could be missing, and it was interesting to hear, like a Dexter Lawrence type in the middle.
Yeah,
for the
Minnesota. Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want a Dexter Lawrence? The guy leads the league in sacks right now.
You go and you watch the Detroit Lions tape and the things that they can do against anybody up front, and it's like you have to have an answer for your closest enemy. And for the Minnesota Vikings, it's like, how can we bully the bullies? And you get a guy like Dexter Lawrence or another space heater in the middle. A guy on the Bears, Andrew Billings, is like a leverage monster that would be an awesome addition. But if I'm Chicago, I'm not letting Billings watch.
I think if I'm the Vikings, I would want interior offensive lineman would be somewhere where I'd be looking
for sure.
As well.
Matt Stafford.
Yeah,
that's actually a real rumor that's going around too.
That's a real rumor this morning.
Flesh out how a Matt Stafford trade to the Minnesota Vikings.
I don't know how that works.
I don't know how it works either.
But that's what I've seen on Twitter this morning.
Okay,
it's funny that they play each other Thursday.
Yes.
Well, and people are saying Cooper Kupp to the Vikings as well as a possibility.
How much more weapons do you need?
I do think if I'm the Rams, Cooper Kupp is a real piece that I'm thinking about moving.
Yeah.
Because you see where you're at as a roster. He's 32 years old.
Yeah.
Same age as DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I don't think he's lost quite the step that D-Hop has. Never been his game. He's always been that underneath separator type of guy, plays with strength, wins with, savvy. But his contract is fairly large still.
That's the issue.
Whoever's going to take him on has to pay him a lot of money. If you're the Los Angeles Rams, I think you would be willing to get the draft pick back just for the resetting and the cap space back because of how unhealthy he's been at this point. I don't think you can rely on him. And I think if you're the Rams, you're really looking to reset this roster as best you can, as they've done, especially on the defense side of the ball. So going back to Matt Stafford here, his contract, to trade him right now, it's possible whoever is taking him on would take on somewhere in the neighborhood of $10+ million in cap space this season. And then cap hits of $49 million, $53 million the next 2 years. Oof. So it's a healthy amount to take on, but it's also Matt Stafford. For the Minnesota Vikings perspective, though, with just drafting J.J. McCarthy, I don't think they would do it.
They only got one loss, too, this year.
But, I mean, it's a fun one. I think the Cooper Kupp one is more interesting. To put some numbers to the Cooper Kupp deal and what it would look like. His cap hits the next 2 years. $29 million, $27 million. Now,
can he play quarterback?
Correct.
Now, again, the Rams could eat some of that in any trade, but I do also think they don't want to be paying him that much.
Correct.
So,
supposedly the Chiefs checked in on him because the cap number was so large. There was like, there's no way we can fit this in our books.
See, and this is the part of the NFL that I don't really understand. Obviously, I think about like fit in terms of scheme, or if a guy's got enough youth or some juice left. Well, that makes sense. That trade makes sense from a positional standpoint. It's that numbers game that I have to get better at, because that's the biggest part of it, right? I mean,
yes,
compensation, finishing out these contracts.
Yeah.
And it's also why, from a trade perspective, you almost always see guys moved in the last year of their deal.
Yep.
Because that's when the cap numbers, you take the least hit as the team trading them away. But if you're dealing a guy, Cooper Kupp, 2 years left on his deal, Matt Stafford, a couple years left on his deal.
That's the heavy earnings portion.
You're eating the bonus as the team that trades him. The team that you're trading him to, they just have to pay his salaries. You eat the bonuses. Now you can structure it in a way that you can renegotiate these things.
It's like Denver's still paying Russell.
Yes, but unfortunately, that's just how it works. I'm so glad
that's not my job. Like the finance, it's like, holy shit, that has got to be a
math has to be math.
That's a nightmare of a job.
So anyone looking at Cooper Kupp is just like, it's going to cost you.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So
and what are you actually getting? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Are you going to be able to get 8 games left?
Correct.
The other guys that I think are interesting trade pieces, Hassan Reddick. Obviously, we know what's been going on.
They just came to terms.
He just got he just got his team issued gear like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Chase Young, I think, is the
Chase Young makes a lot of sense.
Chase Young's one of those guys where you put him in a new situation. You know, this is like me imagining my best version of Chase Young. And a Chase Young, if he goes to a place that has the opportunity to win, you could get some juice out of him.
Yeah, I actually like you having him go back to the 49ers because he played really well there in spurts last year. And they're a team that's been dealing with significant injuries. So they're going to have to really lean on their defense the next couple of weeks.
I do think if you're the New Orleans Saints, I'm starting to sell that.
Wholesale.
It's over.
But some of those contracts are so bad. It's just like,
that is the thing. They're also in one of those.
They keep kicking the can down the road.
That's
eventually
what you
they have to start over.
Kicking the can.
But with Chase Young, he was one of those guys they just signed on a 1 year deal that it's not going to cost them too much. So, yeah, those are my favorite hypotheticals.